You're really against that horse.
I'm not against him. I just don't like the. I just don't like the.
Welcome along to the Let's Talk Racing YouTube channel in association with Racing TV. I'm Joshua Stacey. I'm joined alongside Andrew Blair White. And there's one thing that we do need to discuss before we get into this video, and that's your chair.
Yeah, it is. It seems to be a gradual thing of...
Plenty of comments.
Yeah, awful lot of comments about it. Obviously, I'm in the smaller room over there now. I've got a good setup in the small room. Even you have to admit that. I've made good use of the space I have.
You have indeed, yeah.
But this being said, people think I'm sitting on a box in comparison to your big chair. Now, I do understand you're in a good big chair and stuff like that. What people won't realise is that I'm on a John Lewis. Softly padded, I would say. And it is honestly the coziest chair I have ever sat on in my life.
It's class. It's nice. Very nice.
Expense. It was a very expensive chair.
Yeah.
Went up to the man with my sister when she came over and helped me move in. Schmoozed a little bit. We got it for a third of the price.
It was a very good purchase, and it's very comfortable to sit on. I've got a chair that I've had for ages, so that's just why it's slightly bigger.
Yeah, exactly. Look, I want to take away those feelings that I'm sitting on a cardboard box while you're in this absolute monster. I would hazard a guess mine is actually a comfier seat.
We do hope you enjoyed Tuesday's video. Sorry, this is slightly more delayed. From now on, it will be Monday morning upload 9 a.m. and Thursday morning upload 9 a.m. Really looking forward to doing the 2 videos a week. And this video, we are going to be touching on some of the highlights over the weekend. And the issue is Ascot is off. Haydock not confirmed yet at the point of recording, but extremely likely to go. So we're not going to touch on the racing this weekend at all. We might mention a couple of entries on Sunday over in Ireland, but that is just speculative. Like, we're not 100% sure that's going to go ahead either. But you'd hopefully think that it could, with slightly warmer temperatures over there. But we're basically going to fire through a few questions that we asked for on Twitter, and thank you very much for all the responses, and thank you very much for all the support on the latest videos. It's greatly appreciated. The likes have been incredible. I think we've hit 500 likes the last 3 videos. So if we could do that again, maybe 600 this time, that'd be incredible, building up to the Cheltenham Festival. And do get your comments down below. We always enjoy reading them. And subscribe, obviously, to the channel if you haven't already. We're very close to 16,000 subscribers.
Yeah, I was only going to mention that we're on a final push towards 16,000. And I think when we set off to start this, probably in and around 2 years ago to the day, pretty much from here leading up to the Dublin Racing Festival of 2020, I don't think we could have foreseen how it's gone. And as we said in the previous video, to try get three points in a row with the 500 likes, the lads absolutely smashed it.
We're trying to get 17,500 before the Cheltenham Festival. It's a big ask. There's not a lot left, but I think it could be possible. Right, let's get on to the racing this weekend. And the starting point is Night and Day, who turned up in a mare's maiden hurdle. The last time we saw her was in the 2.5 mile Grade 1 at Fairyhouse behind the likes of Love Envoy, Brandy Love. She was tailed off that day, but it was a first run. And I thought it was interesting that Willie pitched her into a Grade 1. I think they thought an awful lot of her at home. And it was kind of win-win that day, because if she won, well, they've got a Grade 1 their first time out. And if she lost, which was likely, then she would be a maiden for this year and she'd still be a novice. She went and I'd say won pretty well. Yeah,
she won well on deep ground at Clonmel, hard ground to quicken up in as well, and she won easy. Her jumping probably needs a little bit of improving, and if she's going to take proper order in a mare's novice hurdle, I think she could well have the ability to do so, but you would probably like to see her run again between now and the festival, just to see her sharpen up a little bit more. I'm not saying that can't be done. I think it's just match practice she's missing, but she did it very impressively. She didn't beat a whole pile, but that's always going to happen in these mares' maiden hurdles at this time of the year. They're not the most robust contests in the world, and she did it as easily as you would have hoped she would, and she's now a live contender for that race. Probably a little bit shorter than she should be in the market. I think there was maybe a small bit of an overreaction, but she's probably a good 12, 14 to 1 chance, I'd have thought.
Yeah, maybe. I thought she was slightly better than that. It was the same race that Dino Blue won last year before running this. I would definitely like to see Night and Day run again. I think that is imperative. If she went to go straight to the mare's novice, I wouldn't give her a squeak, but she could kick on from that and maybe strip fitter for the run as well and improve. I definitely think she's got a big chance. The big talking point, I suppose, of this week with regards to runners was Gaelic Warrior, who ran in a 2 mile race on the same card, the Munster Hurdle.
Yep.
Did we learn an awful lot about him?
I think we learned absolutely nothing, to be honest. Look, he was up against the Charles Burns horse he should have been beating on any type of ratings. People will say, oh, well, he beat Blue Sari. Like, anyone that thinks they were trying to josh with Blue Sari has unfortunately just got their Gaelic Warriors tinted glasses on, because I think Blue Sari's not a horse that's going to be out of bounds in a Coral Cup this year, actually. I suspect they'll go down that route. He's well handicapped on his chase form back over hurdles, and I thought he was a pretty nice run, actually, considering he was farmed out the back and made good late progress. Gaelic Warrior is a very good horse. He's a very talented horse, and I've done a bit of bashing of him throughout this season, and that's probably harsh given how good a horse he is and how much ability he does have. But at the same stage, people that love this horse for Cheltenham, like, do they have their eyes closed watching this horse? Like, he shifts out to his right at every single hurdle, and that's in an uncompetitive race just out by himself. And we saw what he did at Cheltenham last year, and it just strikes me a little bit like Asterion Furlonge. And people gave me heaps of abuse for Furlonge that I kept going to the well when people are saying, oh, well, he does this, he does that, he does this. And yet every man and dog seems to love Gaelic Warrior for Cheltenham. And yet, is he not doing not maybe quite as drastically, but he's doing a relatively similar job of it.
Where do you think he's likely to turn up if he does go to the festival? Because I personally would scratch off the Betfair hurdle, because I think he's been given a mark of 144, but with a £5 winning penalty, he'd effectively be running for 149 if he turned up. Like, it might be worth a go, but I think that's a big ask personally. I don't think he'll run there either. So he's probably likely to go straight to Cheltenham, I would say.
Yep.
Why do you think he'll turn up?
Well, I think it'll be a Grade 1 contest. I think they were just dipping their toe in the water, really, with the handicap, see if they could pull another fast one like they did last year, and see whether he could be a county hurdle or Martin Pipe horse. That's quite clearly gone out the window. So it's Supreme or Ballymore. Personally, I'd maybe favour the Ballymore. I just think over 2 miles, as much as he may have the pace for it, he won't get away with it jumping-wise at all. You know, you might get away with it that slight bit more in the Ballymore, but at the same stage, the old course is, you know, I suppose a slightly tighter track in that regard, and I think that jumping is just going to be his Achilles heel. I struggle to see him winning a Grade 1 at Cheltenham with that jumping. I'm not saying he couldn't win a Grade 1 at Punchestown, but I just don't see it happening at the festival.
Big news in the Stairs Hurdle division this week. A big setback for Florin Porter, and it looks touch and go, probably favouring not going to Cheltenham. I got those vibes. Yeah,
me too, which is an awful shame. Obviously a 2-time winner, you want to see those horses come back and try to retain his crown. Do you feel that horse has been right all year?
No.
Though? He's ran pretty listless races both times, I thought. Like, I was unenthused at Christmas. You know, I thought Christmas was going to be a big day and he'd run really well. He might not win, but he'd run really well. Again, was a bit flat. And I just wonder whether something's been niggling at him all year.
I would agree. I think we mentioned that a couple of times as well. He's just... last year, I know he was beaten by Classical Dream at Christmas, but he ran extremely well in the circumstances. Obviously, Classical Dream got that head start at the beginning. And he's just not shown that life or zest for the game.
Zest is exactly the right word, because he's usually one of these horses that you can barely hold on to. And yet this year, like especially at Leopardstown at Christmas, like Danny Mullins was kind of near on forcing him to be out in front. It was as if he really didn't fancy it in the slightest.
This weekend hopefully we've got some Irish racing at Thurles on Sunday. Alaroy Devassi entered in the Mare's Chase, Dino Blue also in that. But the big race, Chacun Pour Soi, looks like he could go up in trip and face Pic D'Orhy. That'd be a good race.
Yeah, it'd be a great race. And hopefully Chacun Pour Soi can run well up in trip. I feel they're slightly clutching at straws at this stage. They probably know he can't beat an Ergamine and probably can't beat Blue Lord even at this stage over 2 miles. And therefore they're maybe trying to make a Ryanair horse out of him. I can't see it personally. I know people are trying to equivalate him to Min, but you remember, like, Min was winning the John Durkin every year. At least he was showing some type of form over 2.5. Chacun hasn't gone past 2 miles in any run over in Ireland so far. So it's going to be interesting. The way he finished off his race at Christmas, it's worth a go, and fair enough, and I'd love to see him win. He's a horse I love, but it all seems a little bit lastminute.com for me.
Yeah, I know they mentioned going up a trip at the start of the season, but I think that was purely if he didn't win one of those big Grade 1s at Leopardstown, and after the run at Christmas, I don't think he was ever going to run in the 2 mile race at Leopardstown at the Dublin Racing Festival.
No, well, I think he's just now back down the pecking order ever so slightly. Like, I don't know, Ergamine probably will run in a rearranged Clarence House. Fingers crossed that might be on trials day, which I think me and Josh are planning to go to, which is going to be an absolute burner. turn-up now. But at the same stage, I think he's below Blue Lord. Like, Blue Lord will be the number one for the Dublin Chase now, and rightly so, given what he did at Christmas.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. We'll move on to a few questions now. Thank you ever so much for sending them in. The first one comes in from Dave, a friend of ours, Cheltenham. You might hear him on YouTube. And he said, I would love to hear your rundown of the Gold Cup runners. I think it's the race this year with the most established form and fewer question marks around the runners. So thinking you might have a reasonable view on most of the field. Thanks.
You'd like to hope,
yeah,
Dave.
hopefully. Fingers crossed. I'm going to run through it, and I want you to give me your quick fire opinion, and I'll try and do the same if I have one that's different to yours. Galopin Des Champs at the head of the market. Wins if he stays?
Think so, yeah.
I would tend to agree. Noble Yates.
He's a horse that's improving, and I don't want to completely rule him out, but at the same stage, he's a horse that I've just really struggled to warm to. I don't know whether that's because I got my fingers burnt on him a few times last year, but I just can't really see him being a Gold Cup horse. I don't know why that is, but I just don't really see it.
Sprouted Wings at Aintree, I'm still not sure he's good enough to win a Gold Cup. Aplu Tide, I think he's obviously off last year. I never expected to be in this position at this stage of the season, but he's so hard to back off that run at Haydock, and the fact he's going straight there, like, you'd love to see him before, and if he's going straight there, it's a no bet for me.
Yeah, I'd say so, but at the same stage, like, if he was to run before he's running in the Irish Gold Cup, I'd give him less chance in the Gold Cup if he had to run in that. So it's a very funny one. I think you'll know with Aplu Tide, if he does go to the Gold Cup straight, you'll know kind of almost by betting pattern and by vibe how he's going to run. They'll either think they've got him back to A1 and then he'll be very strong in a market, they'll be very interested in him, or he'll be one of those where they're there going, well, it's been a rush against time and he hasn't really been right all year. I'd be maybe erring on the side of the latter there. I just don't think he's really right. He wasn't right over in Haydock. He obviously then missed Leopardstown. He missed Leopardstown with a little injury on the day, which then set him back a little bit more. Just seems to be constant setback after setback. They haven't got a clear run, and you can't back off Gold Cup horse back based off that.
Do you have doubts over the trip or track for Brave Man's Game?
Yeah, I think that the track thing is a little bit overplayed, I believe. He's only ran at the track once. And
it was a good run.
He was well beaten in the end in the Ballymore, but he ran well. He was probably a bit of a weak horse at the stage. I think you'd have to have trip reservations. But at the same stage, he finished off very strongly over 3-1 at Wetherby and finished the King George very well. I know they're different tests, and Cheltenham is a completely different test. I completely understand that. But at the same stage, I just think Brave Man's Game, we discussed it a week or two ago in one of the previous videos. I think he's been very easily pigeonholed as just a Kempton horse, as just a 3-mile horse. He certainly can't stay, and he certainly hates Cheltenham. And I don't believe either of them are as fact as some people make out.
No. I think if they went a crawl in the Gold Cup, which doesn't happen often, but it happened last year, and Aplu Tide was the speed horse, I think that would suit Brave Man's Game, because he's going to jump well and he would have a better chance of staying the trip. I think he could place. I doubt he's going to win it. I'd love to see it. I doubt it. I just feel that a slowly run Gold Cup would aid him.
Yeah, but it could well be. Like, we were talking about this off air. Who's going to make the running in the Gold Cup? Like, exactly, you don't see any pace there.
No, I agree. You think maybe a Hoyt-Senior if he was to go, but he won't be there for very long, will he? Well, if he jumps the same way he did this year.
Yeah, he could do absolutely anything. Obviously, Lahan Presse's not there now. You know, he could have been another pace angle in the race. I just don't see who's going on. And you get these years, especially like Alboon Photo's second year, where they go round a Tiddlywinks gallop.
I know you were pretty harsh on Statler. You thought he should have won at Tremor on New Year's Day. Have you changed your mind at all? Well,
if he was a Gold Cup winner in waiting, he'd have won at Tremor. No doubt about it. Penalty aside, 2 mile 5 aside, I don't buy it. You know, I was really keen on Statler for the Gold Cup, and I can still see him running a good race. But fact over fact is the fact that, you know, like he should have won at Tremor, and I think he had every chance to do so. He went a half length up after the last, jumped the last superbly. and got out battled by Manella Indo. Manella Indo's a very good horse. I'm sure he would have been ready to run for his life at Tramore, because things haven't gone quite well with some of Henry's horses this year. But at the same stage, you would have wanted to have seen him win. It was like Album Photo's first year when he won at Tramore. He had some difficult horses to beat, but he went and did it. And he only won by 2.5 lengths, but at least he had promise in it. And I just can't see Statler winning the Gold Cup on the back of that. If he goes and runs well, finishes third or fourth, I maybe wouldn't be massively surprised, but he'd be off my win list personally.
I think he's likely to run well. I'm not sure he's good enough to beat a Galop and Deschamps. He's an absolute superstar. If he stays, I think he'll just win a different league. Protectorat's an interesting one. Very good in the Betfair Chase. It looks like he's going to run in the Cotswold Chase on Trials Day at the end of this month. I think he might go close again. I'm not saying he's going to win, but I think he could easily run into a place again.
Yeah, potentially so.
Because out of all of them, is he not the one that you probably don't have any reservation with trip? It's just a case of, is he good enough?
Yeah, I think so. And he ran a perfectly respectable race in the race last year. And you could end up looking at this race when they get round to the Gold Cup that actually last year's was probably a more robust race, depth-wise. I don't think this race, we know the form a lot, but I don't think it's got heaps of depth. And a few of the main protagonists have kind of big question marks over them at the moment. Protectorat's a solid horse. The only thing I wouldn't like to see is him having a slog of a race in the Cotswolds. No. I think that could really, really kill his Gold Cup chances. If he has a run on soft to heavy ground, he gets into a bit of a battle and has a bit of a grueler, he's got no chance in the Gold Cup. So you'd want maybe slightly better ground at Cheltenham and maybe not the best field in the world, that he could have maybe a slightly more routine victory.
A quick word on Conflated.
Yeah, he's a good horse. I'd run him in the Irish Gold Cup just to, keep ticking away with prize money, to be honest. It reminds me of the year that you thought that Delta Work would win the Gold Cup, though, and he's just not quite good enough.
No, and Manella Indo and Hewick, any chance?
Hewick, absolutely no chance in my eyes, to be honest. Great story, obviously, but no chance. Manella Indo, you'd love to see it for the heartstrings perspective, but again, just think he's probably past his all-time best at this stage.
I'm going to ask you a question that we've not prepped. I want to name right now your fourth, third, second and first in the Gold Cup.
Jeez, you're absolutely killing me.
I'll go first. My fourth would be, I think Brave Man's Game will finish fourth in the Gold Cup. I think he'll be right there, maybe jumping the last, but I'm not sure he'll quite get up the hill, especially if it's softer ground. I think third will be Statler. I think he could run on extremely well, just not be good enough, bump into one, almost a bit like Galvin last year in a similar colours. I think Protectorat will finish second, and I think Galop and Deschamps will win it.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that in general premise. I'd have Brave Man's Game probably in fourth as well. Similar reasons as yourself. Protectorat maybe in third. I just see, this is hypothetical, obviously. If the vibes are right, those horses couldn't hold a candle to A Plus Tard. And I
don't think he's right.
Maybe not, but at the same stage, we're talking in a hypothetical land. We're talking 2 months down the line, and I'd have A Plus Tard in there in second. I think Galop and Deschamps, even if A Plus Tard was near on at his best, I think Galop and Deschamps could still well beat him. So he'd be my winner, and I suppose my bigger play of the whole race is I don't think Statler will hit the frame.
No placing for Statler. You're really against that horse.
I'm not against him. I don't like the Tramore run.
We'll move on. Roger Armstrong asks, what are your thoughts on Gordon Elliott's Mare Novice hurdlers? Now, he's got plenty. Out of the big guns, I picked out Liberty Dance, Deeply Superficial, Halter Du Tabert, and Harmonia Maker. They're the big four, would you say?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Which one do you think's the best?
Hard to know. I think the best long-term prospect is definitely Deeply Superficial. I've been very impressed with how she jumps. Seems to be a strong travelling mare as well. I think she'll be a good mare over a fence next year.
And the last day, I think she's up against the Geldings, and she probably just didn't quite see it through. She's still a mare up against them, 2.5 miles, graded race.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty decent run to a certain degree. I think she's, again, travelled into the race nicely. I really liked what she did at Galway. I know that form hasn't been necessarily franked because Law Ella's seemed to have gone off the boil for the Cromwells this year, but that can sometimes happen. I like her a lot. Talbert won at Naas when I saw her into a strong headwind, won very impressively. Ava Grace has won an egg and spoon race since in behind. Hard to know. She kind of didn't jump necessarily very fluently, but still won well. I think she's got a big engine.
I think she'd be my favourite out of those, personally.
maybe so. I was really, really impressed with Liberty Dance. I don't know whether it was because it was the whole Davy Russell scenario. I don't know whether that slightly plays into it, but at the same stage, she made the Model Kingdom look awfully ordinary down in Thurles. And I know we've said the Model King, like, she was a horse I liked at the start of the season. She's held her form pretty well, ran a decent race behind Impere Pass. She's not a bad mare. And you're looking at it going, Liberty Dance beat her just as impressively as Impere Pass did. I thought that was really good. Harmonia Maker would be definitely 4th of 4 for me. I think she's won 2 races from the front that have been a bit scrappy. She's got her own way. And the one time she was put under a little bit of pressure, she folded. When I was there at Punchestown, I didn't really like that performance.
So you think Liberty Dance, Gordon Elliott's probably best chance of winning that race?
I think Liberty Dance is probably the best horse at the moment. And I think Deeply Superficial is the best long-term prospect.
Do you think Gordon Elliott could win that race?
No.
No. Willie? Or Henry?
I'd say Willie's got the aces usually. I think Magical Zoe's got a good chance for Henry if the pace collapses, but overall you'd usually want to be on Willie's side.
Matthew Tunnerdine asked, it sounds stupid, it doesn't sound stupid, any question is extremely we're thankful for. He says, I reckon Pic D'Orhy might have a place claim if he went to the Ryanair. Seems a much more settled horse this year. He was very impressive at the weekend in the Silvignaco Conti Chase. I don't think he'll go to Cheltenham personally. I think he'll go to Ascot for the Ascot Chase, the 2.5 mile grade 1. It's likely to be deep ground. And then I think he'll probably skip Cheltenham and go to Aintree for the Melling. Let's say he did go and run in the Ryanair. Would he be of interest at all? I struggle to see it personally.
I think he probably wants a slightly easier 2.5, really. He's one of these horses that's obviously a strong traveller. He was very impressive at Kempton.
And he has improved massively.
Yeah, certainly. And he's a horse I like a lot. I've actually won a bit of money on him this year as well in those types of races. I just wonder whether those are his types of races overall. And the good thing for viewers here is no question's a stupid one. I took one for the team at the start of the season, putting up Wrexham for the Bartlett. Now, I've set the standard of stupid, so therefore everyone else is shrewd in comparison to me.
Absolutely. We also had another question. A handicapper at this point that's not yet qualified that could be particularly interesting. I know we've both discussed Spanish Harlem, who runs for Willie Mullins. He's had 2 runs over hurdles so far, one in France, one over here where he finished behind I Know the Way You're Thinking. Very eye-catching run, very expensive. I think he has, out of all of Willie's unexposed novices, he's the most Galopin de Champ kind of could be a grade 1 novice chaser next year out of them. I think he cost 360 grand, 330 grand, an enormous fee. And you would imagine the further he goes, the better he'll be. So if they can get 2 more runs into him, he's meant to run this week, then he could turn up in something like a Martin Pipe. I can't expect him to do much winning between now and the festival.
No, I understand that. I think that's a fair enough point to be made. A horse that was entered in the handicap hurdle at Thurles on Sunday that I'm very interested in is another Willie Mullins horse, is Tikau. With the potential to be a Boodle's horse. I thought he was really impressive at Leopardstown at Christmas, one very snug. Certainly one of those where you win a maiden hurdle, but Mark Walsh, he's the absolute king at not winning too far. And he only went and won by a length or something. I thought he had bags in hand. It's been given an initial Irish rating of 121. I couldn't make head nor tails of that. If he manages to pipe into a Fred Winter off even 130, 135, I'd have thought he had a huge chance.
Very interesting one for a handicap at the Cheltenham Festival. Joel Swan asks, I'd love to hear your thoughts on Luccia. Where do you expect Henderson to run her next? And what do you think of her chances at the festival? And the last time we saw her was at the Ladbrokes Trophy meeting. She opened up the card, winning very impressively, beating She's a Saint, who's probably not gone on to make that form look great, but she couldn't have done it any more impressively. She had plenty in hand. You expect her to strip fitter for that as well. But we've not seen her. She was meant to run in the Tolworth. I think she had a slight setback, or they took her out for ground. I'm not 100% sure on that. And I've heard the Sydney Bank's been mentioned at Huntington. I know Nicky's used that race for Shishkin, and he likes to send a good horse there. So it is a nice point to run. Good timing pre-Cheltenham. Gives her enough time to get there, and it's over 2-3. So you see if she stays. I know the Mare's Novice is over 2-1, 2-2.
2-1, yep.
So what do you make of Luccia?
Yeah, I think you'd want to see her again. I think it would be a vote of confidence if she rocked up in a Sydney Banks. They don't seem to be anyway fearful of running her against geldings, which is usually a good sign. I thought she jumped really well on hurdling debut. Only thing for me is she comes across, certainly, I think she's been withdrawn now 2 or 3 times because of the ground. She just maybe is a little bit needy as a horse, needs kind of very certain conditions, which would just always temper my enthusiasm. Whether that's Nicky just having the cotton wool gloves on, which sometimes is a good thing to a certain extent, because he only has that really with his really good horses. So you can look at that one way or the other, but I don't know, you'd want to see her go and run certainly very well in a Sydney Banks. I think if she rocked up in a Sydney Banks getting £7, she probably should win the race.
Yeah, I would agree. Nathan Buck asks, has there been any news regarding Barry the Butcher? And if it has, any chance he's going to the Champion Bumper? I would say extremely unlikely he'll go to the Champion Bumper. He'd have to run pretty much now and go there after one run. I think he'll probably run, if he's going to run anywhere, in that Gorham Park Bumper that Henry loves to send one of his good ones to. The likes of Bob Weinger, the likes of Journey with Me is usually very testing. It usually goes under the radar because it's around Cheltenham time. I think he could run there. I would not confirm that, but I'd imagine they've got a race like that planned for him in the spring. We'll see him once he'll be put away and he'll go hurdling the following year. The final question is from the betting ring. Do you think Willie has one working away at home targeted for the Albert Bartlett, like the nice guy last year? I was thinking fact or file for JP, a point-to-point winner, and took all day to get going in his bumper over 2.5 miles at Christmas. He's 6 this season, hardly going to wait to go novice hurdling at 7. What did you make of fact or file?
Yeah, I thought he did very well to win from where he was. To be honest, I think the form's pretty good as well. Will do. It ran well in a maiden hurdle. It was maybe a tad bit disappointing in that race in third. And Irish Panther came with a very large reputation for Eddie O'Grady and looked like he'd win the race all the way round, to be honest. And somehow fact or file got up. I wouldn't disagree with that. The only thing is, I suppose you are slightly running out of time. You need to see this horse out in a maiden hurdle very soon.
Exactly, and I was looking at it last year. The nice guy who obviously won the Albert Bartlett, won that race at Leopardstown at Christmas. He ran in a maiden hurdle at Naas on the Jan 30th. So I suppose he's got a couple of weeks, but he has to run in that couple of weeks to run in the Albert Bartlett. Out of all of them, I thought Indiana Dream was possibly the Albert Bartlett horse. We've seen him once for Willie, JP horse, won at Ferryhouse, and that day he shaped to me, out of all of Willie's novice hurdlers so far, he shaped to me like the one that would get 3 miles, that could still have that class edge. And he reminded me of a bit of a monkfish, big lump, could be a really smart novice chaser next year. I think right now he would be my personal favourite going towards an Albert Bartlett. He might run the Nathaniel Lacey next.
Potentially so, yeah. I see he's up in the betting for that race. That'll be a fascinating race, really. That will shape the Albert Bartlett and potentially Ballymore markets quite a bit. There's quite a few in there that I like and you like as well. So it would be very interesting to see how that goes. I couldn't put you off. Indiana Dream was very impressive. Suppose you'd want to maybe see it again. And the fact that he's going to be thrown straight into a Grade 1, it's going to be hard on him. At the same stage, you know, he looks to be, you know, ready-made for it. He won over 2.5 on really heavy ground and looked to be kind of almost getting better and better the further he was going. So he might be the one. I think fact or file at this stage, I know he's probably still got a couple of weeks to go out and win a maiden hurdle, but you have to realise the nice guy was a bit of an anomaly. You know, it's not going to happen every year that a horse can just win a 2 mile. Like, the nice guy won a 2 mile maiden hurdle and suddenly rocked up in the Bartlett. Like, and me and my dad backed the nice guy at Naas. I know, heavy after time, but he was 6-4, 7-4. Like, he was a very backable price. And so there never seemed to be any confidence in this horse, and yet he absolutely bounded in the Bartlett. So maybe something will come from left field, but it's not something that I would necessarily see as a growing trend.
And we definitely need to see the Nathaniel Lacey before we have a proper look at the Albert Bartlett. And we are going to look into the Dublin Racing Festival anti-post markets on our video on Tuesday. All of the Grade 1s. We'll also look through the entries as well for some of the other races. They are out. We do hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like button. If we could hit 500, maybe 600 likes in this video, that would be great. Get your comments and thoughts down below and subscribe to Let's Talk Racing if you haven't already. We do hope you have a good weekend and we'll see you soon.